everybody. My name is Alan. On behalf of the crew, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. You know, this whole experiment that all of us have in having a human body and in walking through this life is just, it's an amazement. It's just an extraordinary experience for us all. I mean, I don't think anyone who lives on this earth at this time, and this time of so much growth and wisdom and technological advances and extraordinary ways that we can reach people through a telephone, through an internet connection across the world in a hairbreadth. And then the other side of that is all the turmoil and the disharmony and the wars and the killings and the depleted uraniums and the toxic wastes and all the things that we do to almost cut off the branch we're sitting on. And what's the great mystery in all that? What is that razor's edge that cuts through, that is the heart of this human experience? And one way or another, most of us know the true mystery, the root behind this conglomeration of events, this conglomeration of feelings that happen in a human life, is that love, is that God, is that oneness, is that truth that is the underlying quality of all of us. And then the question is, how do we get into that mystery? How do we solve, in a sense, that mystery? And that's the amazement of this life. And that's what, throughout history, the beginners of the religions, the roots of all the religions, the teachers, the masters, the gurus, the goddesses who came onto this earth have always said, in essence, the same thing, is that we are all the same love, that we are all that same essence, and there is no other that we can be. So for all of us, it's a way of taking all the singular events seemingly in our lives and transcending or deepening or quickening, or however you would describe it, to make that realization, that truth, a walking manifestation in our lives, a reality. And now's the time for it. We just can't afford not to come into that love. We can't afford to let the divisions any longer stop us from experiencing that root. We have to heal the heart. And as you know, that's what the Bridging Heaven and Earth show is about, is one way or another, through one spoke on the wheel, through one path or another, to bring us into that heart. That was its intention from show one, and that's its intention now. And again, we have guests and videos of people whose lives are dedicated to feeling love and sharing it. We have Elizabeth and Neil Carman with us. They're spiritual teachers. They're authors of this extraordinary new book, Cosmic Cradle. That's an unbelievably inspiring collection of stories that open the door to the world of life before biological conception. How there is a knowing about that. I mean, they've spent years and years interviewing hundreds, literally hundreds of people, children and parents, and how that process is, how we can bring consciousness into the process of birth. So maybe we don't have to go through all the craziness to come into that consciousness. And we're also fortunate to have some extraordinary music videos from, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Krishna Das. He has a beautiful music video, The Yoga of Chant, that we were allowed from he and his record company to show you tonight. And we're just honored to have Elizabeth and Neil and the video. So, once again, it's time. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's be part of that love. Let's take that next step. So as we normally do, join me in a short meditation. Just settle in. Just, let this next 58 minutes deepen your love, your experience of that oneness. So please join me in a short meditation. If you don't know one, just relax, settle into your chair, settle into your couch, and just come with us. Thank you. So we're going to start tonight's show with a Krishna Das music video. It's from his DVD, The Yoga of Chant. Now, if you're watching this when we're actually taping it live, which is March 12th, 2004, in Santa Barbara in Southern California, Krishna Das is going to be playing live concerts in Santa Barbara on the 16th in Santa Barbara, the 17th in Ojai, the 19th and 21st in LA. I'll mention that again when we do the next video. But so if you want to be part of that, give me a call. It'll go, my telephone number, the email will be on the screen later, and I'll mention it later. So Krishna Das, it's beautiful.
Sante
the set with Neil. Welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
Yes, thank you, Alan.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So, I mean, as I said in the opening, you guys have spent enormous amounts of time and energy and love, you know, delving into that issue of like the pre-birth consciousness. And what brought you to do that? Why don't you start, you know, how that came into your world?
I've always been interested in higher consciousness, and I was researching women's experiences on the way to motherhood and what their experiences were giving birth to their children in a state of ecstasy without any pain. And that led to the unfoldment of this whole...
What's the percentage of that? I mean, do a lot of people have that experience? Because you hear so much about, you know, the rigors of childbirth.
Well, I found the whole range of experience, but I did find women that were giving birth in ecstasy. They said a cosmic orgasm is how they described it.
Wow, now you're talking.
Yeah, way beyond sexual orgasms.
Wow.
And then they unfolded more and said, well, I was communicating with the baby when it was in the womb, and it was telling me what its life plan was, and I was getting messages and guidance.
Were these particularly conscious people to begin with? Or?
They were very conscious. I started with people that had been on a spiritual path mainly, and focusing on their evolution and raising their consciousness through meditation and a healthier lifestyle. So they were unique. It wasn't just somebody on the street.
Yeah, I thought it was a random. This is a miracle, you know.
So one step led deeper and deeper, and then they were also aware when the egg and sperm met on the level of consciousness, sometimes at the time of conception or at sexual intercourse or a few days later. And then they would also reveal, oh, even before I became pregnant, several years or 10 years or 15 years, I had visions of my child. I had dreams of my child. I communicated with my child. So this opened the whole range of this this adventure to motherhood.
And you didn't know that when you were walking through that door, it was like for a newspaper article or a magazine article.
It was a magazine article.
And then all of a sudden it's this 4-volume encyclopedia.
It quickly expanded and exploded, very, very quickly.
Because it hadn't been really talked about much in this modern day, right?
No, it hasn't. There's a few books that have been written about some of it, but no one has done the comprehensive research that we have done, because we took it to all the cultures and all the religions and went way beyond this phenomenon of meeting the children before conception. We also included people who have those memories of not only being born or being in mother's womb, but where they were before they came into mother's womb, how they chose their parents, how they traveled between heaven and earth.
Wow.
Yeah.
To get on this show, I mean, people will do anything. It's unbelievable. So, and also, I mean, in some of the earlier parts of the book, you talk about that in a way, soul energies came to parents and said, who didn't want children, and said, you are to have a child, you need to have a child, you need to have me, right? I mean, yes. Tell that story. That was an amazing story.
Well, there's a number of stories like that, where it's part of the destiny of the parents, and they're just maybe less conscious of it than the soul that is preparing for birth. And so some of these parents, though, will have the consciousness of knowing that this experience is real, that these souls are, even though you maybe can't touch them or see them as we think of, people still, through subtle vision or premonitions, whatever, are having these communications experiences, and they're very real to people, and they keep coming. So maybe at first a parent or a set of parents are resistant, like, we already have 2 or 3 children and we don't want any more, and yet this child says, well, you know, I'm coming, prepare.
Wow. And so from the one story that I was referring to, I mean, it was almost the person resisted for a while, and then it was like, it was clear, and that message kept coming clearer and clearer and more forcefully in a way, right?
Yes, like I said, there's not just, although maybe there's one primary story about that in Cosmic Cradle, we actually have more in the forthcoming books that there's quite a bit of that, because sometimes people may have certain pinches. They already have children, or maybe there's difficulties in their marriage, or other circumstances that, make it somewhat challenging to bring a child or another child into the world. And yet these, souls want to come in and be in this family, and maybe the circumstances will change. But, life, as we know, has its ups and downs, and the souls recognize that, and the parents are going to go through certain kinds of experiences with these children. And the children realize that in their cosmic contract, their plan for life, they're going to come into a certain family with certain genetics, a certain culture, a certain time frame, a certain time to be born. Even, you might say, the astrological aspects that the child wants to be born with, so it can fulfill its life plan.
And does every soul coming into a human body have a life plan?
Well, we believe they do, okay? That it's, in other words, life is not an accident, and what happens primarily is not an accident. In Cosmic Cradle, we came up with the idea of what we call a cosmic contract, that the children, the souls, are choosing with the help of guides, angelic beings, helpers. They're choosing the families and the time period to come into. And as we see in the world today, there's a very large number, billions of souls that have come to participate in this drama on Earth at this time. So this is a very precious time in the world.
And Elizabeth, does every soul come in to grow? I mean, on some level or some way of viewing, the whole cosmic news of it all,
I believe that's true. There's a purpose for it. It's not an accident that we're here.
So even the people who look like they're doing heinous acts, who look like they're creating tremendous disharmony and tremendous suffering for, numerous people, there's some plan, there's some Judas type plan, there's something, is that what you're...
It's difficult to believe, I think, because we're looking at it from such a narrow perspective, but if we could look at it through the eyes of God, I think we would see that all of this is part of his entertainment, so to speak, that we have this duality here. We're in a world of duality, of positive and negative and good and evil. And some folks are given or choose a certain role. Maybe they choose to be the bad guy.
I mean, is that your experience, that it is a chosen role, that people do choose to be the Hitlers, the Mussolinis, the Judases? I mean, is that part of, and I want to come to these, the demented, abusive parents. I mean, is that also part of the...
Well, I think in a way it's not necessarily an aspect that we investigated that much, because it has so much...
Only the demented mind.
It has so much negative connotation with it.
I'm just only as like an understanding of like the nature of the human experience and how we come in here. I mean, I'm not even looking at it as negative or positive in a way.
Yeah, well, I think you can look at it from that standpoint, though, Alan, that there are negative things that happen in life, and that we, the souls, may look through at their future life plan and see, yes, there's ups and there's down periods, there's positives and there's negatives, and in that way too, we can say that there's certain people in the world that maybe will serve up some kind of negativity. That's very difficult.
As part of the plan. So.
Maybe as part of the soul's evolution.
There's a story from the Indian tradition about this, how in the heavenly worlds, someone went up to visit the Lord, and they were knocking at the gates of heaven, and they appeared as little children. And the gatekeeper says, "Oh, no, you can't come in. You're just little children. You're not allowed to come in." And they kept persisting, and they were held back. They weren't able to come in. And so then the Lord appeared and said, "What's going on here? Don't you know this is a test? These are really, high saints who are coming in to see me, and you didn't pass the test. Therefore, you must pay the price, and you can choose to have a lifetime on Earth, 100 times in a normal body, just average kind of life, or you can play the role of the evil one for 3 times, and then you will come back here when you're finished." And so they wisely chose 3 times. They didn't want to stay out of the heavenly world too long. So we don't know the big picture. It's hard for us in our human with our human vision to see things from the biggest perspective. So I think it's difficult to pass judgment on things.
So, and one of the purposes of your book is to like add consciousness to that whole birthing process. I mean, we were talking earlier today, you know, in my house about, you know, there seems to be a tremendous energy now for people dealing with children, so they don't have to go through so much turmoil to come into consciousness. That to make that process and to make the education of children much more conscious from day one and before day one. You know?
Even with conception itself, that actually pregnancy is a very spiritual, powerful process of development in the parents, and it's something that should be carefully planned and not sort of be serendipitous, as it tends to be in most cases around the world.
And so your experience would be is that if consciousness, obviously, if consciousness was brought to this arena, then that would allow for more consciousness to come through from day one, from birth. And that child would be able to have the gifts that that child was born with and not lose them and have to recover them and realize them again.
There would be a lot less trauma. As you know, we know there's a lot of people experience trauma in the pregnancy and childbirth, and the traumas could be psychological, they can be physical, they may be of a more psychic or spiritual nature, but that there's a lot of things then that we have to deal with as we're growing up. So this would help, I think, deal with preventing those kinds of traumatic things from happening. You know, one story we are aware of is where a child later in life has a lot of difficulties and is traced back to the pregnancy, and that the parents had a big argument about whether to have that child or not because the father wanted a new car and the mother wanted the child.
There you go. So there's a good balance. Wow. So that person experienced that
trauma that kept coming up until it was dealt with later, and the parents admitted later in life that yes, they had a very nasty argument about whether to have that child or not. And so I think, you know, even that intent of, you know, whether they want a child or not is a very powerful consciousness from the standpoint of the parents, that they are influencing that fetus at that point and its future life. So it's very important for the parents to be filled with loving consciousness as much as they can towards that child.
And your hope would be is that this book, by bringing that into people's consciousness, would allow that to more smoothly happen.
Well, this is the first book in a series of books about this whole process. So this book deals more with the whole preconception, the pre-biological aspect of life that is very hidden from us, because after all, most of us don't remember our birth, let alone our conception, or where we were kind of hanging out in the ethers before our parents conceived us. And yet the memories are buried within us.
And what would be, Elizabeth, like the most important, if you could list like 5 things that, you know, that you came and you had a spiritual background, but that you learned that, you know, were like, wow.
Well, we are, well, that's a big question. 5 points.
All right, go 3. I'm easy. I'm very easy when it comes to this.
Well,
he could do 5. I don't think.
Well, what's fascinating to me is I feel I'm by nature a builder of bridges between peoples, different cultures, religions, the ancients and the moderns, and to see the similarities, the commonalities between them on this subject was very fascinating. And
did that surprise you? Because it wouldn't surprise me. You know, in some ways, it was fun to
unfold that and to find it and to discover it, because it's been hidden. It hasn't been brought out in this particular area.
Interesting.
And to see all of the parallels between the different cultures, the parallels between, for example, the Judeo-Christian tradition when they talk about Jacob's ladder. and that's the ladder that Jacob has a dream. He sees a ladder that goes from the middle of the earth up to the heavens, and he sees angels going up and down the ladder. And our interpretation of this is that this is the ladder, the highway between heaven and earth that takes us from the higher regions to earth. The angels escort us down the ladder, and at the end of life, they bring us back up. Well, we find that image in so many other cultures. In the Native American culture, for example, there's the story of this bridge that links this world to the higher worlds. And in one particular case, this person was having a near-death type of experience and crossing the bridge, and before he got to the world of light, there was a string of babies coming back from the light to earth. And these were the babies coming to be born on earth. So there was two-way traffic, just like the angels going back and forth on the ladder in Jacob's vision. So many cross-cultural parallels. There's over 600 in our book, and this is what I find fascinating, to see how the different cultures express this. So that's another possible answer to your question.
I'm going to hold you to 3.
Do we have time?
No,
okay, Neil.
Neil. Pick up from there.
Well,
what blew you away about these things?
Well, again, I think just the fact that this is such a universal phenomenon is very powerful, and that it's been happening throughout time. When we begin to look back at history, at the Greeks, the Romans, and we look at other cultures where there is access to some information, we find that this is not something just happening today, but it's been happening for a long time.
Precognition? Is that what you mean? That's the something?
Yes.
And there are stories throughout history in every culture, every race, religion, of this kind of information
Yeah, and I think there's been awareness of it, but it's not the kind of thing that's been maybe widely taught or written down very much, but maybe, in old wives' tales. I think, women are more aware of this because of the fact that they go through the pregnancy. But, even in many of the cultures, the males or relatives or perhaps saintly individuals will come to parents and say that, you are to be the parents of a divine child or the parents of a child. Maybe you couldn't have children for a long time. And so it's really extraordinary that in every culture and throughout time, because this is such an important process, to bring people into the world. And, like I said, today there's...
To perpetuate the species would seem to have some level of importance and significance.
Well, that's sort of at a very mundane level, but there's really a spiritual basis of all of this, and we tend to kind of gloss over that very easily.
Well, why do you think that is? Why do you think that the lack of consciousness, the lack of intuition, affects that the way it affects everything else? You just think it's like the whole nature of that we've densified in a way that, we're not sensitive, that we're not intuitive, and that affects the birth process, affects the death process, and the whole...
Well, to some extent, it's part of the grand drama. If we were all the same, you might say the world would be kind of a boring place. There would be too much sameness or not a lack of diversity. So, a presence of diversity. So when this is the world of duality, diversity, different colors of everything, different types of plant and animal life, and it's just the nature of, you might say, the relative field of experience, that there just is a great deal, whether you go from the microscopic level, subatomic particles, the level of life, the level of the cosmos and the galaxies and the stars, everywhere we see this immense fields of diversity, and that's very much what we easily get caught up with in this world. So if we were all the same, it would just be too boring. So in this grand drama of creation, so the creator.
But, it's interesting, but in essence, we are all the same, and we're not all the same. That's the glory of it in a way.
Right.
And somehow we've put more weight on the ways we're different, and so we think we're different. It's an interesting... Yeah,
in the cosmic and in the spiritual sense, there is only one. There is only this oneness, but yet in this field of diversity here on this relative plane of existence, we're temporarily blinded to it. So, people wonder, well, where is heaven? Well, it's right here. It's right now. It always has been, it always will be. But we are temporarily blinded from it. So a lot of us don't have that experience until we transcend, or we begin to have these powerful spiritual experiences where we expand beyond just this small physical body, and we begin to feel these experiences of unity with all creation, with everything.
Wow, that's beautiful. Okay, maybe that's a perfect time for us to have the second video. Because, I mean, you know, you say Krishna Das is such a big fan of, you know, you're such a big fan of his, and we feel the same way. So maybe what we'll do is have the second video, and then we'll come back with Elizabeth and Neil and talk more about this. But, okay, so the second video is Krishna Das. It's from his music DVD, The Yoga of Chant. If you're in Santa Barbara, you're in this, you know, Southern California, you know, around March 12th, 2004, call me and I will give you at 805-687-2053, and I'll give you information on when Krishna Das is going to be playing around this area. You know, he's just magical. You can see it, you can feel it. So, Krishna Das.
Durga, Ma Durga, Ma Durga, Ma Durga, Ma
Hi, well, we're back on the set with Elizabeth and Neil. Hi.
Hello, thank you.
So, Elizabeth, why don't you talk about, you were saying earlier today about some of the parallels between, the Jewish ideas of some of these things, and why don't you talk about that a little?
Oh, this is always so fascinating to see how the cultures express these ideas in a little bit different ways, but it's the same underlying theme, the same underlying beliefs. And one parallel is the story of how the soul leaves the heavenly worlds and comes down to be born. And in the Jewish tradition, in the Kabbalah, they talk about how the soul, or God calls an angel and says, bring such and such a soul to me. It's time for that soul to have a human experience. And so the angel brings the soul before the Lord, and the Lord says, it's time for you to leave this place. And the soul says, oh, please, please, this is paradise. I don't want to go down there. I'll be corrupted. I just want to stay here. Well, please don't send me. And there's a consultation, there's an audience, and God says, well, you are born with certain gifts, and you need to bring those to earth and grow and evolve there. And so there's a certain contract, there's a certain plan for you, and so there's a discussion, and the soul surrenders to that. And when it's in the womb, at one point, an angel comes and puts a light behind the head of the fetus, and the soul then can see in all directions, infinite directions, in past, present, future, everything. And then when it comes out of the womb, when it's born, the angel of forgetfulness comes and touches it right below the nose, and that's why we have that little indentation. And that angel of forgetfulness causes that complete loss of that memory that took place during the womb time. Now, this is very similar to what we find in India. They talk about the life of the soul in the womb, and they say 60 days before birth, the soul is very aware of all the past lives and what's happening in the present situation, and it says, oh, God, I'm in this prison. I was free, floating in the heavenly worlds, pure spirit, and now here I am in this physical body. And I remember doing this before. I remember previous lives. I remember what happened. I remember what it's like to be born and to die and all the things. Oh, please, God, please let me out of this prison. Please, please. So it gives a sincere prayer. And God responds in this case. In this tradition, they say that God comes and teaches the soul how to meditate while it's in the womb, and it gives him a special mantra, so hum. So hum means I am pure being, I am pure spirit, I am beyond this little physical body of the fetus. And so the soul settles down and transcends and realizes it's pure spirit. But then when it comes out at the time of the birth process, it comes down the birth canal, and it's very traumatic. And because of that birth trauma, there is a forgetfulness of all that spiritual knowledge that it gained while it meditated in the womb and expanded its awareness. So very similar to this parallel from the Judaic tradition, and then what we find in modern prenatal psychology. They're telling us that there is the process of forgetfulness. They're looking at it in terms of the hormones that get released during the birthing process. Oxytocin is released into the mother's bloodstream, and this hormone allows the contractions to be easier, and it also has the effect of causing forgetfulness.
Wow.
So the mother forgets some of the pain that she experienced during the birthing process.
And that's natural in the female.
Yes, and so they're ready to have another child. It's probably good, otherwise they might say they'll never do it again. So it's a natural thing that comes, but that oxytocin is also passed into the baby's bloodstream, and so there's a forgetfulness there. And so it's on a kind of a physical hormonal level that it's taking place.
So it's not really surprising that human beings have forgotten the oneness.
Yes, there's all kinds of traditions that explain why that's important to happen.
And are you seeing, or in your investigation, both internally and with your 4 million interviews, that we're coming into another process where that remembrance will be clearer?
Yes, I think this is why we were able to find so many people with amazing stories and children. And so they want their stories to be told. They want to share this, and even after we publish the book, we keep finding more and more. So there's a lot out there, thousands and thousands who are convinced, just in the U.S. And so the thing here is the fact that, these memories they're there probably, if a baby could speak, it might have some of these memories, but it's most of us are not able to speak for maybe 2 years. And by that time, a lot of these memories are kind of buried in our subconscious. And sometimes the older children will ask their little baby brother or sister when it learns to speak, do you remember what heaven was like? Could you tell me about God? Because I'm beginning to forget. And, as we, each year of life, we know that we forget most of the past. Our memory is so fleeting. 99.99% of our life is forgotten. Who wants to recall all the details? But so there's a lot of circumstances also, for example, with people who were born through a cesarean section. Several individuals we interviewed there were having these memories more active because they did come through the normal birth process. They didn't go through that it was a different kind of trauma, but without the pressure on the brain and maybe as much oxytocin exposure to the fetus, they circumvented some of that.
Well, that's an interesting concept.
And so these memories, several children amaze their parents with their accurate memories of being in the womb and birth, some of the details that happened in their births.
And so what would cause the people who have remembered much more clearly as opposed to the ones who don't? From what you're saying, almost every tradition has that the human condition is such that forgetting happens. Yes. To some extent. So how can we go as a species into remembering and not, more light, more love from day one before, day 1 minus 10 or day 1 minus 9 months, or, just always?
It's part of a consciousness growth process. And so some souls come in and they're much more conscious, they're more advanced in a sense, and then some souls are a little bit, behind, and they will catch up.
Would you say that we're going through a time now where the energies in some way, for some reason, are developing in a way that there's more ability to remember, that there's more, that those old systems of forgetting are not as in effect, that we're transforming from the Kali Yuga, the Dark Age, to the Sat Yuga, and something is changing to allow that to happen? Are you seeing that? The indigo children, or what is your experience with that, Elizabeth?
Well, from the little research we've done, we feel we've just it's just the tip of the iceberg. It was so easy for us to find these cases of the memories or the special children who are coming in. We didn't do all the follow-up on all of these women who are having these contacts with the children prior to conception, but in many cases, the little that we did in that area, they were very gifted children with special healing gifts or clairvoyant or just unconditional love.
So do you think that there's a momentum change now?
It appears to be. That wasn't our focus, but we were finding that, definitely. And also the memory, people having these memories. This was not difficult for us to find these individuals.
Did you put ads in magazines?
No.
Or
Serendipity. You might say we were guided to people just routinely. Friends and so forth. It just happened.
They're from all over the world.
Yes. Yes.
And you were guided. You never put an ad in a psychology magazine.
We didn't have to. You might say we put out a divine ad. You might say
and it just started coming.
People were just led to us.
Wow.
Yes, and they wanted to. People who'd never shared stories before. Even like one man, 7 75, who is a retired military intelligence officer, had never had his story published or widely told, and it's a phenomenal story about his memory of picking out his parents. And then at the age of 25, when he confronted his parents about his extraordinary conception process, and I'm not talking about here about the birth, but how he was conceived, and when he confronted his parents with the details of it, they confirmed that the details were accurate. And
Of
for
the
him,
conception.
yes, because it was unusual, and it's in the book. We,
Right.
you know, people can read the story, but he was able to confirm the details with his parents. And it's not the kind of thing, because of some embarrassing circumstances, they didn't want to talk about it. So it's not the kind of thing that this young man had heard his parents talking about. It was embarrassing, so they didn't talk about it. And they were very conservative German parents. So, you know, it's not the kind of thing that we hear our parents talking about, how we conceived, you know, Johnny or Susie or Alan or whatever, you know.
Right.
I never heard my parents talk about any of the conceptions of my brothers and sisters or myself. You know, maybe the
Did
birth.
parents have sex? I didn't even know that. I was shocked to this day. I don't know. So, and you were telling a story earlier about you came across someone who not only remembered this birth, but remembered from breaking off from the infinite, or...
Oh, that was one of the most amazing stories. Beverly Anderson had a near-death experience at the age of 8, and prior to that she was having inklings of different lifetimes. And at the age of 8 she fell off a horse, had a head injury, and she said she went to the other side and saw all of her costumes, and she not only saw the different lifetimes that she lived, but she also saw that spiritual state in between, and how each life was planned in advance, in some cases planning 8 lifetimes ahead. Certain lessons were learned over 8 lifetimes. And so I said to Beverly, I said, well, how far back does your memory go? And she said, I remember coming from the all that is as a projectile of light. I remember being spat out, pushed out as a projectile of light, and I was screaming through the universe, she said, like a little star. And she said there was no sensation of movement, however, but there were stars passing by, no sensation of movement, no density, no up, no down, no right, no left, no colors, just pure energy. And this experience reminded me of the tradition of India, where they talk about the God source being one, I am one, and then he decided to manifest as all of us individual souls, as sparks. Or the Big Bang theory from physics, talking about it, everything was one and concentrated and then broke off. So it's fascinating to explore these memories.
Yeah, and I would also emphasize, Alan, that we find that people are having these memories without necessarily having to go through hypnosis or using any kind of chemicals or whatever, that a lot of people just are having these memories appear, you know, they're there spontaneously, naturally. And so, you know, it's really amazing, because I think, you know, 20, 30 years ago, we were more used to hearing about these things maybe through hypnosis, or people, you know, taking various kinds of drugs for, you know, different induced states of consciousness. And so I think it really shows that these kinds of memories are available to our consciousness without doing anything necessarily somewhat artificial or, you know, from the outside, that we can go in and find that they're there.
And ultimately, you know, the deeper we go into the experience of remembering, the more harmony. There's some level of harmony about it. There's some level of love. There's some level of the experience of oneness. Is that what, you know?
We come from the oneness, and we are the oneness. And in our cosmic
So it's just our forgetting.
we have forgotten who. There's a sense of separation there. And we need to.
Temporary forgetfulness. A little amnesia, you might say.
And how does it work that do certain souls come into more remembrance? Does every soul take a certain level of number of lifetimes, or does some souls take less? I mean, What is that part of the mystery? Have you come up with any theories on that?
4 different patterns of birth. Elizabeth, I don't know if you want to explain
Well,
that. But
this is one theory about from Buddhism. The Buddha said that we can come into the mother's womb knowingly. That is, we're fully conscious and be in the mother's womb knowingly. We've chosen our parents and everything is, and we come out knowingly. So it's full consciousness all the way along. Or we can come in knowingly, stay in the womb knowingly, but once we come out of that birth canal and have that first breath, the veils come down and we forget. So forgetfulness begins at that point.
And how does it get decided?
well, and then there's 2 more.
Well,
there's 2 more options.
I know, but
Well,
so,
how
I
does
mean,
it
there
get
could be 100
decided?
more, but how does that
There's
work?
different levels of soul, I would say, different levels of maturity as we're progressing
So we
on
don't
our
actually
journey.
get to choose.
Well, we can choose maybe how fast we want to go or how slow. It seems that way from some of the people we
Yeah, I mean,
have
it's just
talked
an
to.
interesting.
Some people choose a harder curriculum, and some people choose an easier curriculum, and so maybe there's more rewards later.
You know, this has always been an interesting question to me because there's something about it that doesn't compute to me. I mean, all the theories and all the explanations. But how does it work? Like, does somebody, when they get shot off the spark, I mean, does one person choose, is that a choice? And is there a choice in that you would want that to be a harder path or 500 lives? And do you choose then, or do you choose in between? I mean, all the explanations don't seem to explain it, as far as I could tell. There's something else. There's something else about the infiniteness of it, and the game of it, and the mystery of it, and that any explanation. You know, what I say is like there are 3 dots before it and 3 dots after it.
Well,
so if the human mind can explain it, it isn't enough somehow or something.
Well, I think part of it is that in our English language or Western language, there's a lot of these concepts that are very hard to grasp, you know, to grok, the whole idea of the transcendental field of knowledge. So we almost have to develop a whole new vocabulary. We have to develop insights. We have to have techniques and tools to develop this consciousness so that then we can appreciate what you're really asking. Because I think it's a very big question. For example, Beverly Anderson, when she was shown how she was planning one of her lives, she was like in front of a computer screen and she was mixing and matching just like we do in making a movie, okay? That, well, I'd like a little bit of this in this lifetime and a little bit of that. And so she was, allowed to do that, but, encouraged not to try to work out too much of karma or difficult circumstances. Otherwise, the soul gets kind of burned out. It gets kind of fried in the physical. So it's encouraged, not to overload
and
itself.
Encouraged by masters and angels and things like that.
Yeah.
But some souls are very ambitious.
Yes.
They're high-pitched.
High-pitched.
They know what's available. They know what the potential is, and they want to go for it.
And so what happens to this high-pitched life? It's running at a high speed, and a lot of things could happen to it.
Well, they take on more challenges.
I think this time that we're living in on the earth with, billions of souls and all the drama that's being played out in the world today is just immense. I mean, it's really incomprehensible when you look at it. And yet there is just a tremendous, whether you go from, here in the U.S. to all over the world, when you travel, it's amazing how much drama and challenging circumstances we see. It's a very amazing time on Earth. And so a lot of souls have come here. This is not an accident.
Yeah, we're busy here. So I think surprisingly enough, we're basically coming to the end of another show, and just an enormous amount was said. And wherever you come out, we all know that what we want is to have that experience of the love, of the oneness, of the truth. And if we can have it at birth, if we can have it before birth, if we can have it in between births, for us in these human bodies, in a way that's interesting and that's far out, but in a way it's for us to have it now, in this moment now. And then the question is, how can we come into that in this moment now? And whatever way we know how to do that, whatever understandings we have to take it to the next, take it in, drop it down, drop it more. And you know, I mean, that's why we're here, that's why we do the show, and that's why, you know, I know that's why you guys watch. So if you want any information about the book, Cosmic Cradle, Neil and Elizabeth, Krishna Das, 805-687-2053. Good night, we love you.